Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to design 5 completely different reverb sounds with Revelation in Cubase. Let's get started. So we're going to create a few different types of reverbs in this video. The first reverb type that we're going to create is a drum room type of reverb. Next, I'm going to show you how to create a classic vocal plate reverb.
Better will come one day. Your blue sky will not turn gray.
Then we're going to create a very short reverb for vocals that will allow you to make your vocals sound a little bit more 3D.
Better will come one day. Your blue sky will not turn gray.
We're also going to create a vintage type of reverb for electric guitars. And last but not least, we're going to create some long, spacious, atmospheric reverbs for synths. So let's start with the drum room reverb. So I have these drums right here, and as you can see, I've created a send effect, and on this send effect, I have Revelation right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play these drums completely dry. And one of the reasons why you might want to add a room type of reverb to drums is so that you can make them a little bit more spacious, you can make them a little bit bigger, you can enhance the sustain of the drum kit so the snare sounds a little bit bigger and the whole drum kit as a whole is glued together by the reverb. So that's what I'm going to do in this case, and I'm going to load a brand new instance of Revelation so that you can follow along. This is the default preset that opens up when we load Revelation. So I'm going to start introducing this reverb by adjusting my slider right here. Okay, so this is the default reverb. So now let me show you the procedure. Let me explain the controls, because after this preset, I'm going to go a little bit faster. So Revelation has quite a few parameters, but I'm going to break it down for you so that you can create your own presets. The first side of the reverb is the early reflections. And these are the very first reflections of the room that the sound is being played in. And the early reflections are completely separate to the tail of the reverb. So in order to show you this, I'm going to start with the early reflections first. So I'm going to take this slider here and move it all the way to early reflections. This means that we won't get any of the tail, just the early reflections. And this is a great way to give our drum room a little bit of a three-dimensional quality. So because we only have the early reflections, I only need to care about this section here, the early reflections, the pre-delay, and our early reflection model. So let's start with the early reflections, and I'm going to explain what I do here. Now, the first thing I want to do is, instead of using the whole early reflection model, I'm going to go for the studio because I want to have this tight room sound. So let's go for studio. Yeah, that works much better. Now, you can see here that I can set my pre-delay. Now, I don't want to use pre-delay for the drums because this will create a flamming effect. So, of course, you can be creative. You might want this kind of effect. But in this case, I'm going to go and tweak my early reflections here. So I'm going to play with the sides a little bit. And I want to use a low cut so that I can clean up my low end. And the high cut makes the early reflections a little bit duller if I want to make them a little bit darker. So already we have a little bit of an image and the drums sound a little bit more alive. So I'm going to park it there with the early reflections, and now I'm going to deal with the tail. And like I said, all these things that I'm showing you right here are going to apply on the next reverb types we're going to create. So I'm going to go all the way to the tail now. And for the tail, we have way more controls. We have the modulation, we have the decay controls, and of course, all the different tail controls. So in this case, as I said, I'm going for a tight room. So let's go for the room size and let's start adjusting this. Now I'm going to start adjusting the time, so this is going to determine how long the decay of the reverb is going to be. Now the shape is going to affect the envelope of the reverb. So if you have it all the way to 0, you will see the attack is very sharp. And if I have a longer shape, you will see that we have a smoother attack. So let's have a listen. So I think I'm going to play a little bit with the room. Density adjusts the echo density of the reverb tail. So if we go all the way to 0, we can really hear the defined reflections from the walls. But if we go all the way to 100%, these single reflections from the walls cannot be heard. Let me show you a very extreme example. If I go all the way 0 with the density, you can get more of a echoey, grainy sound if you go all the way to 0. This is not what I want in this case for my drums, but I'm going to show you how I use it later for the guitar's reverb. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 100% with density. High cut makes the reverb a little bit darker. And if I want the high end of the reverb to have a longer decay, I can play with the high time. And the same goes for the low time. Hear that? So you can be very creative with these parameters. In this case, I'm going to turn off modulation, and now I'm going to blend in the early reflections and the tail. So without the reverb, so this way we've added a nice room to our drum kit. We've made it a little bit more alive. And even if it sounds a little bit too much right now, that it's completely naked, I promise you that in the context of a mix, this will make your drums sound bigger and you won't perceive it as a reverb. And of course you can play with the amount if you want to. You can send as much as you want to your send channel. Now let's move on to the second reverb, and in this case I'm going to show you a very typical vocal reverb, a plate type of reverb.
Better will come one day. Your blue sky will not turn gray, and things will go your way. Don't worry.
So let me explain very quickly what I've done here. Feel free to copy these parameters, of course, but let me explain a little bit of what I have here. So as you can see here, I have a very big difference. I'm not using the early reflections at all, and there's a reason for this, because the next reverb that I'm going to show you takes care of this. So I'm going completely all the way to tail, so I don't need to care about this section right here. And as you can see, I have a medium to large room size and a main time of 42%. Now the shape is all the way to 100% because I want the reverb to have a little bit of a smoother action, and density again is 100% because I want it to be 100% smooth. I don't want any graininess or anything like that. My high cut is quite dark, so I have it at 3.5K, and the width is all the way to 100%. And this, of course, allows us to make the reverb narrower or very wide. These are the controls that I chose for my decay. So as you can see, the high time is minus 59%. I don't want this reverb to be very bright, because if I do this, if there's a sibilant sound like an S, then this sound is going to last way, way longer in the reverb tail. And last but not least, we have the modulation. This is on, and we have a very slow rate and very low depth. Hold that thought, because I'm going to show you exactly how modulation sounds like in one of the next examples. So that's how it sounds.
Better will come one day. Your blue sky will not turn gray, and things will go your way. Don't worry.
Now, this is a very typical plate style reverb for vocals, but I'm pairing this with a third reverb type that I want to show you today, and this is the width type of reverb. This is how it looks like, and as you can see, this has very little tail percentage and it's mostly early reflections. So I'm going to start adding this to my vocal.
Better will come one day. Your blue sky will not turn gray, and things...
And as you can hear, you don't perceive this as a reverb, but it adds this three-dimensional quality to the vocal. Now, for this specific type of reverb, I choose to use the chamber early reflection model because I feel it works a little bit better for these vocals. I have a little bit of pre-delay, so I'm delaying the reverb for around 60 milliseconds, okay? So I have a little bit of a delay. I'm adding the early reflections, and I've set a size of 35%, a low cut quite high, it's at 200 Hertz, and the high cut is all the way up because I don't want to make this dark. I want this to be nice and bright because I want to have this as an extra layer, a sheen to the vocal. Now, the tail is again very, very short. As you can see, room size is very short, main time is very short, shape is at 15%, so in this case, I want the attack. And density is also very low. So let me play this for you.
Better will come one day. Your blue sky will not turn gray.
But I'm favoring the early reflections in this case. You can see the rest of the parameters, but the main core of this reverb is that we have the early reflections as an extra layer to the vocal to give it a little bit of depth. And the pre-delay helps, of course. If I change the pre-delay,
things will go your way, don't worry.
It sounds almost like a delay, right? But I'm going to keep it somewhere where we don't perceive this as a delay. Let's say around 50, 40.
Things will go your...
Now, when I blend these two reverbs together, then we get the final vocal reverb sound.
Things will go your way, don't worry. Better will come one day. Your blue sky will not turn gray, and things will go your way, don't worry.
Now, let's move on to the next reverb type, and this is a vintage-sounding reverb sound for electric guitars. Let me play the guitar dry first, and I'm going to introduce the reverb. Now, let me explain a little bit of what I've done here. This is again using just the tail, okay? I'm not using any of the early reflections. So what I'm doing here is I have a relatively small room size, I have a long main time, and the shape, I have it again at around 70%. So I'm tailing off a little bit of the attack. It's not so strong when it comes to attack. Now, in this case, I have a very low density, and this is because I want this kind of grainy reverb sound because I'm trying to emulate a little bit of a spring reverb kind of sound. So let's have a listen. So if I have a density all the way up in this case, it's not so satisfying. This way it sounds really nice and vintage, grimy. You know, it's almost like these classic reverb sounds that you would get out of an amp or something like this. I have a little bit of pre-delay, actually 100 milliseconds of pre-delay. Again, all the way to the tail. And in this case, I am playing a little bit with the modulation. And as you can see here, I have quite a bit of depth. So 47% of depth. And the rate is at 12 Hertz. But let's play a little bit and see what we can come up with. So you can hear that when I add a little bit of faster rate, we get this kind of very interesting, almost like chorus-like effect, vibro effect. So yeah, Revelation is a reverb, but you can use it as an excellent effect for guitars, for vocals, for whatever you want. So if I turn modulation off, and in this case, by the way, as you can see, I have a lower high-cut filter for my reverb. And as you can see right here, my width is at 46%. I want this reverb to sound a little bit more mono because I'm going for a vintage sound. So I don't go all the way up with the width. This is a little bit of a more high-definition reverb, so I'm going a little bit more narrow. So now let's move on to the last reverb type that I want to show you here today, and this is more of a lush, long reverb, something that would work great with pads or synths. So I'm going to play this pad here from Retrolog, and then I'm going to go up with a mix here on Revelation. So you can hear it's a reverb that's really long, it's beautiful. Let me explain what I've done here. Again, I'm using just the tail. I don't need the early reflections for this one because it's a very long sound. So what I'm doing all the way up with early reflections, I have a very long pre-delay. I want this to sound a little bit of like a delay, but because it's a pad, it doesn't really sound like this. It makes everything super wide. So I have 228 milliseconds of pre-delay. And as you can see here, what I have is another delay for the tail. Room size is all the way up to 100%. Main time is at 77%, quite long. Shape, I have it at 3.5. But again, if I want to make it a little bit softer, I can do something like this. I want the reverb to be a little bit more defined when it comes in this case. Density is 100%. I want this to sound lush. High cut, width all the way up. These are my decay settings, nothing special there, but right now I'm going to play a little bit with the modulation so that you can see how it sounds when we start adding a little bit of modulation. So let's listen. So it sounds like we've added an additional synth layer. In this case, I think reverbs are like instruments, like synths, okay? We can add another extra layer. It doesn't sound like we just added space. And, you know, if we want to play a little bit more with it, I can add a little bit of time here, make it super long. If you go 100%, then the reverb is going to last forever pretty much. So I'm going to go for 90%. And this sounds lovely, it sounds lush. So there you go, these are 5 reverb types that you can create with Revelation. I hope this video helps you understand how to start building your own custom reverb presets because it's a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed this, let us know in the comments down below if you did, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.